today's small business breakthrough presentation. My name is Mike Bowers. I am the Center Director for the Ohio Small Business Development Center at Columbus State Community College. We serve Central Ohio with Small Business Development Center services. If you are not familiar with the SBDC, what we do is we basically support entrepreneurs all the way from I want to start a small business and that's all I know. I don't know anything else. I don't know anything about business. I want to do it. Or I've been in business for a while and I am growing and want to keep growing. I'm not growing and want to start growing. I need to pivot, whatever that happens to be. So we support in a variety of different business functions, business planning, strategy, market validation, marketing, and financing, et cetera. So a lot of things that we provide. And I always kind of forget this part, and I guess it's kind of important. The small business services are free of charge to the users. So as a small business owner, you do not have to put money out to use our services. So I hate to say it's free because sometimes you get what you pay for when you say free, but it doesn't cost you anything, so it's not free. So let's go like that. I also want to thank the Dublin Entrepreneurial Center for partnering with us on this effort. We've been involved with the DEC for years and years, since the DEC's inception. And I want to bring in the manager of the DEC, Chaz Fertel, and like to ask him to say a few words about the DEC for you.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Mike, for the introduction. And it always is a pleasure to work side by side with small business development centers and the Central Ohio group especially. And hello to Tanya also. But good morning to everybody, and welcome to another meaningful and informative event that we're about to have this morning. The Dublin Entrepreneurial Center is in business now for 12 years. We were established back in 2009. We're proud to host approximately 150 businesses on site. Certainly, if not the largest, one of the largest entrepreneur centers in the United States. And we're most proud of the fact that we've now graduated over 170 businesses from the DEC over that time, and over 90% of them are still in business. So that's a statistic we're most proud of, and we're certainly always eager to help any business. And SBDC maintains space at the DEC, so folks can come and meet with them there, which is outstanding. And I think Mike's actually hosting today from the DEC, so it's good to be there. But anybody that might be interested in help in other ways, financing or investments, those kind of things, or just maybe looking for a new home for your business, we'd be happy to talk with you. But thank you, Mike, and look forward to a great event.
Great, thank you, Chaz, and you're absolutely right. I am actually coming to you from the Dublin Entrepreneurial Center from the DEC today. And this has been again, a great partnership over the years, and we look forward to being able to continue that into the future. So about today's program, so the Small Business Breakthroughs program. So what we're looking to do here is that we're looking to basically bring in entrepreneurs and experts and folks that can talk to you as a small business owner and bring their knowledge to you, not at a high level. So, I mean, we've all been to a lot of programs where it's like, you should do marketing or you should do social media, and there's never really any how to do it kind of thing. So what we want to do is we want to actually kind of set the stage that, yeah, you should be doing certain things. And then let's have a little conversation about how to do that. So that's the game plan with the Small Business Breakthrough Program. Hopefully this is something that we'll be able to continue ongoing. For those of you that are part of today's event, you'll be getting a copy of the recording. And we will also be posting this on our website and our social media channels, and it'll also be on the DEC channels for folks to jump on it and participate with. Also, I want to mention, if you have questions as we go through this, go ahead and put them in the chat, because we have Bruce Walters, who's on our team. He's one of our advisors. He is going to monitor the chat, and periodically I'll go to him and say, ask if we have any questions or anything like that, and have him mention that, and we'll see if we can get some response on that. So today I want to move forward, and I want to thank our featured speaker, which is TJ Eveland. He is the founder of SBC Advising. I got to make sure I pull the one letter out. But we've been working with TJ for probably a year and a half as part of our CARES COVID recovery program and advising program that we put together. And he's done a great job working with entrepreneurs and working with the small business owners that we deal with the SBDC. I see a couple folks from the Akron SBDC that are here today. He also has done work with them. And so I'm going to start out, TJ. I'll just let you do your own introduction. I mean, if you can keep it down below 45 minutes, we'd be good to go, and then we'll ask some questions.
Well, I'm not nearly that interesting, so that's fine. Yeah, I guess why I should be here talking to you, I'll just give you a very brief background. Is I've been a finance professor for about 15 years. I teach finance and negotiation strategies. I'm currently on the faculty at Ohio Dominican, which is right up the road. But maybe more importantly for this conversation is I've started and had fairly successful exits in two businesses, and the most recent venture that we're in is SBC Small Business Advising. So just very brief overview is we have a team of about 10 people, and we provide business advising. So when I say advising, I mean business consulting for really just about every agency across the state of Ohio that provides small business. So we are consultants every day. That's what we do. We diagnose, we talk to small business owners about their problems, about their solutions, and help them implement them. So, I'm very thankful our organization now is really operated by two directors, and then we've got a great team of consultants, which allows me to do things like this and talk to folks and try to better the ecosystem in small business. So yeah, hopefully I can provide some insight today, and I'll keep in mind too that, I'm not going to tell you just go do marketing. I think that's, if you can walk away from the conversation with 2 or 3 things, I mean, in reality, right? If you can go do 2 or 3 things that's going to help, it's been 45 minutes well spent.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I want to start out, you've been, working, your team, been working with entrepreneurs, been working with small businesses, really through this last 18 months, if not a little bit more, but definitely through the last 18 months of COVID, and, we've gotten to where we are today. What are you seeing, and what is your team seeing that is probably most impacting small businesses?
Well, there's really two camps. It's interesting because we've seen small businesses divided into those who are getting so many orders they can't fill them, and those whose product or service became almost immediately obsolete. And that's an interesting chasm that was created. So our job or our calls and the work we're doing really goes in 2 different directions. We're not seeing a whole lot of businesses that are just doing okay. There are some of those, but they're rare. So, we have plenty of examples as to how we've helped people pivot, but I think that's the impact is that, you have many markets that didn't exist 18 months ago existing right now. On the flip side of that, you have a bunch of money rolling into the ecosystem and a lot of support local type campaigns which were all grassroots. So you've got a great market. I know this is going to sound counterintuitive, but you've actually got a really great market for the small businesses that had a product that met the market demands and limitations of the time. The small restaurants, those really didn't have the cash background or the wherewithal to withstand some of you saw the closing rates, right? And some of them didn't make it into where the RRF grant came in. So that's kind of the view right now. Was the product or service dependent, really made the difference as to really once we got through about March, April, May-ish, June, we saw a lot of upticks in some businesses, and some businesses really had to ask themselves some tough questions.
That's interesting because, again, what we hear about oftentimes is the businesses that are struggling, the businesses that are having challenges, and we don't hear about the businesses that are growing fast. And, I've got a set of questions, but I want to talk a little bit more about this fast growing piece because did you see these businesses that all of a sudden there was this opportunity and they started to take off? A lot of times when you grow really fast, especially on the revenue side, you have a lot of growing pains. And did you see cash flow issues and things of that nature, employee issues and stuff like that?
Yeah, to some extent. I mean, people were scared to leave their house. So if they had, if delivery of service and collection of payment was surrounding a person, that you got into that. You literally got into too many orders to fill. Now, what that does, that's a growing pain, but that's a pretty good one. Because what it does is it forces people, and it's not just good because the orders are rolling in, but it forces people to realize the weakness in their business before they scale. So if we can look at that, if we can say, okay, look, you've got all these orders, but somehow we've got to get inventory and you can't pay for it, right? They would have never negotiated terms with their suppliers before. So now it's time to say, here's what's happening. Here's where you can help. I know we've always paid net 30 right when we get it, but we got to negotiate terms with you in order to make. So I'm thinking of a food delivery service in my mind, right? We've got to be able to either have more time or we've got to be able to have more credit to stay in business. But here are the potential sales for the next 6 months. So those were conversations a lot of small business owners were never going to have, but that the big, with painters and a lot of construction companies do the same thing. When those big orders started coming in, the suppliers were really willing to help. And you see a lot of the larger, I'm kind of thinking the Sherwin-Williams types or the major food suppliers, they were really ready to play ball to keep somebody open. I think, at first they didn't realize how bad this thing was going to be. And they wanted to make sure they treated their customer right, so they had them on the other side of it. But I do think it's going to be kind of altruistic. There was a, hey, we got to stick together or this is going to get really bad type conversations happening. And as far as negotiating terms, you could use that. That was something they could use. So yeah, the overflow of orders, the stimulus all hitting the market at the same time, people being home, people not going on vacations, it created a lot of cash moving around. The growing pains caused a lot of small businesses to be more sophisticated than they were in their terms negotiations, collection of payments, customer relations, those types of conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I wanted to mention too, we said to go ahead and put questions you might have in the chat. We'll kind of touch on those. But at the same time, as a small business owner, I think the importance of meetings and events like this is the networking. And because we're virtual, networking becomes a little bit more of a challenge. So don't hesitate. I see a couple of them are putting their information into the chat, maybe a little bit about what they do, things like that. So don't hesitate to do that. That'd be a great opportunity for you guys to kind of connect a little bit. So TJ, here we are. It's August 26th, from my understanding. And what should a small business owner be doing now? I think strategically to kind of position their business to continue to move forward or to move forward as they go around. Typically in a typical year, normally, we'd be talking about, as you're getting into the fall, starting to do some training and build projections and, get yourself ready for the next year. I know Kevin Hammond's on the session. He's one of our team. And he usually does some really nice, trainings around building your financials, planning for next year and stuff like that. But, is there something that's a little different this year? Or is it just, this is what it is, but strategically, what do you think they should be doing now?
Yeah, I'll answer that in two ways. The first thing is there something a little different about this year? Mm-hmm. There is. So we're 2 minutes in, and I'm going to probably step on political toes. Great. There truthfully is a false economy right now, and that's TJ's opinion, right? There is a lot of unearned money floating around, hitting households and hitting small businesses. Now, I'm not saying that's right or wrong. That's not where I'm going with this, okay? But I do think people need to be very cautious about how they're measuring their cash flow and separate earned from unearned revenue and separate real customer base and real market share from what are people buying because of stimulus, right? Because the cliff's going to come at some point in time. And what you don't want to do, Mike, is take the last 9 months. So we'll say, I don't know what is an emergency or what's not, but we'll say when everybody kind of came out, right? And then the money started rolling in. So you had a bunch of people cooped up for a long time that didn't go on vacation, that didn't make purchases, that were kind of, hoarding the cash. And then you had checks rolling in. It's not a bad time to be selling stuff. So I'm not sure what this year's projections are going to show from next year. I have had multiple conversations with business owners with their chest kind of puffed out. And when we start talking about what do you think is organic growth, what do you think is repeatable growth, and what do you think is a product of stimulus checks or the environment we're in, that conversation needs to be different. So when you ask me about what's different this year, I do think picking apart revenues and market share becomes very important, right? And there are ways to do that. There are ways to talk to customers. There are ways to look at previous years. There are ways to find market share that you might have had before. Who's new in business? So that's not impossible, and you can do it even as a small business. Now, the one thing that bothers me about strategy, and if there's anything you can take away, it's this. I work with a lot of business owners with fairly complex issues, and so does my team. The one thing that we always get is the strategy question before the what is success question takes place. And that is really dangerous. We always talk about strategy being the map, which we can build, but you have to know the destination. So, I just saw somebody consult right now is gonna launch off pretty soon, maybe start a publishing company, gonna do some consulting. That's awesome, right? So you've got some things in there that you know what you're going to do. But I don't care if you get Warren Buffett or Mark Zuckerberg on the line. If you don't know where you want to go or what you want to do, you can't develop a strategy. So goal setting for a small business, for a one-person shop, it may sound a little superfluous, but it's not. Goal setting sessions are absolutely needed. Yearly revenue, 1, 3, 5-year plans. You're fooling yourself after 5 years, but 1, 3, 5-year revenue plans and expense projections, absolutely needed. If you don't have that, if I can't walk up to you and you're starting a business, there's a couple questions I'm going to ask right away. One is, how rich do you want to be? How much money do you need? Okay, tell me a number. Great. How are you going to get there? What kind of team do you need? Does your market share support that? It doesn't have to be complicated. I'm not saying, that we've got to do the projections of a nationwide or some complex type organization, but strategy is a map, and it's not really informative unless you have a destination. And that is so important. We see so many small business owners waking up and going to work every day with no idea why. How do you know when you won? How do you know when you want to exit? How do you know when you want to hire the next person? How do you know you can afford the house you're buying? So I get pretty passionate about that because I think that's critical in that strategy is how to achieve something. And we see a lot of people planning strategy without knowing what they're trying to achieve. So it sounds very corporate. I'm not really into that, but it's 100% necessary to guide your actions. Because if you want to make $300,000 a year, you can do that with $1 million business. 30% margin on a business that small isn't too much. But some people set themselves up to make $150,000 a year on a $10 million a year business. That's a lot of headaches for $1.50 a year. And if you don't understand the way those budgets are going to work out, you're going to build yourself problems. You're not going to build yourself a map to a predetermined type destination.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a great point, because I think you're right. I mean, there is a lot of conversation around strategy and things you need to put together, and defining what is success is important. And I think that especially now, defining what is success now. If you started your business in 2016, you were cooking along till 2019. I mean, I'll get your thoughts on this. What's success for you could still be the same, I guess. But, should you be re-looking at that given the economic and potential market changes that you could be experiencing?
Yeah. I mean, there are just some realities of right now. And that's okay. And that's why, typically you do the goal planning every 6 months, or, you do the 3 or 5 year performance adjustments every year, or every 9 months, every quarter, something like that. So it is somewhat fluid, right? But the how to get there is going to change much more than the goal. So if your goal is to get to $1 million in revenue in 5 years and then exit, there's nothing wrong with that. And really, it doesn't even matter which of the 5 years, because you pivot your product and service. You don't often pivot what success is. But it's so important to have, money should not be the North Star, but it sure is easy to count, right? So that is genuine market feedback, right? So I just a very quick story. I had one business that I started, and for 6 months, I called, I networked, I begged, I called, never had a single customer, never, not once. And this product I had multiple CEOs of large corporations tell me, you're on the right track, you just got to get it to work, right? So if I hadn't had a defined goal, I wouldn't have known when to wrap it up. And then you get into years of wasted life or wasted revenue chasing this business down. And that's just, if I can divert from that just a little bit, knowing, I don't want to get ahead of us, but knowing what you're trying to do is critical. The other side of that is know who you're not, right? And that becomes especially important when you talk about strategy, because listen, if you're new into this, you've had a business for a year or so, turning down work is hard to do, right? You want to bring in revenue, you want to expand, you want to get the next customer, you don't know where it's going to lead. You have to be able to say no. And if you don't have a success map, if you don't have the exact idea of what does success look like, who do I want to be, what do I want to do, you're never going to be able to say no and not really feel it in your heart. So I think that, here's who we, we can use mission and vision and everything else, whatever. Just say who you are and chase that. Say what success looks like for what that company wants to be, and build a plan backwards from that. Hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, well, I think so. Absolutely.
If I can, Mike, just real fast, something to always remember, and we've seen it over and over and over and over. It's never the job that you don't take that closes your business. It's the one you take that you shouldn't have. And story after story, it sounds ridiculous, but it's the job you shouldn't have taken that'll probably shut you down.
No, that's absolutely right. We run into a lot of situations where, especially, businesses, especially earlier stage businesses, like you said, they're trying to get some money in the door, and they get money, but the margin is, by the time you get done with it, practically nothing. if not negative. And you don't want to get into that.
And you get a bad reputation because you did something outside your skill set. So it's you get bad money, you get bad reviews, no one feels good. And I'm full of poor analogies, right? But as soon as you say no to somebody, your business is sexy. And I don't know what it is about it, but the more work you tend to say no to because you are who you are, you get more respect in the marketplace because it becomes very clear, here's what we're here to do. And just a little example from our own firm. There's 10 of us. We provide consulting for people, for organizations all over Ohio. At least once a week, businesses try to hire us, and we say no every single time because we work for organizations that support small businesses through other funding models. If we start to chase private clients, we've broken who we are. That's not what we do. $150 an hour is what private consultants charge in our field for private to business. That's a tough rate to turn down, especially when all the systems are in place. But if you compromise who you are, if you go outside of your strategy, go outside of your success model, it's a very dangerous place to be.
Absolutely. I think that's a really, really critical point, especially for a lot of the folks that are on here. As I'm looking through the chat, some of them are getting started, or this is kind of new for them, or this, that, and the other. You got to be able to say no when it's appropriate.
Yeah.
So let me kind of dig down, I guess, a little bit maybe into the strategy part, but I want to talk a little bit about understanding your market, understanding your customers, the whole market research thing. How do you recommend a small business owner, that maybe they got themselves, or maybe it's them and a couple people or whatever, dig down and do this market research, especially when on a day-to-day basis, they're running the business,
right?
And you get into that whole conversation of working in the business or on the business and things of that nature. But I guess that's a two-part. How do you kind of make the time to make sure you can do these types of things, number one? But then when you decide, okay, I'm going to do this market research to validate maybe my market, because your market could have shifted. That's the thing, especially if you've been up for a while. And if you don't know that shift, your point very early on in this conversation, some of those markets are gone. Right. Or if you take a little bit of a look to the left or the right, you got a lot of market. But if you don't look at it. So, how do you do that in addition to how do you find the time to do that?
Yeah, well, I think there's two things here. Well, one is market research is always the proxy for I need to grow revenue or I can't find revenue. So I'm going to rewrite your question a little bit and say, how do we grow revenue, right? Because market research for its own sake is very academic, and that's an exercise you can go through. But I think, how do you find the time to grow revenue or to better understand who your customers are? If you don't have time to do that, I would question what you're doing. As somebody who has, started businesses, sold businesses, I've been in sales. If you don't have time to chase revenue, what are you up to, right? And so let me give you a quick example, and we'll get back to market research in a second. One of the first things we do, or that I previously did, when we worked with businesses having revenue issues, we would sit the owner down and we would say, here's a spreadsheet. For the next week, track all of your time, right? Track everything you do, just in general, and not really telling them why. So you do that for a few weeks. And then what you do after a few weeks is you look at the way time was spent, and invariably, a small, tiny amount of time was spent growing revenue. So we get these, you get these, we're not making sales, and then you look at what you do all day or for a week or for a month. Hey, guess what? Google domains, updating your LinkedIn, filing tax paperwork, setting up your LLC. None of that has anything to do with sales. You got to chase revenue. So market research is important, but I can make it really easy, and I'll do so in a second. But I think look, your job as a business owner is to grow revenue. It's to provide a service that somebody cares about and they'll pay you to do. I wish it was prettier than that. I wish we could all hug each other. But here's the thing: if you're going to stay in business, you have got to make sales. That's what an entrepreneur is. You can sell a solution, period. So when we start doing the time mapping, it's like out of 40 hours in a week, three of them are spent, calling somebody, or God forbid we call somebody, emailing people, right, that you've never met before. So I think that's the biggest issue, Mike, to address the issue, maybe not the question, is how do we grow revenue, realize what your job is. And that's so, you can tell I've been through it 1,000 times. And the coolest thing is,
let me throw one thing in here. It's what you're saying. One of my favorite stories. So, my team that's on here has heard this probably multiple times. We used to have an office space over on Goodale Boulevard, which is what's now across from the Grandview Yard. And we had a guy came in and he was talking about, he wanted to be able to find small manufacturers or, warehousing, different things like that. And how do I do social media to get that?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, we can talk about social media, it's fine. But if you just walk down the street, there's like a whole ton of these guys that you could just go and really probably make a much quicker. But, again, they weren't thinking of it that way. They weren't thinking of it, how do I get the sales? They were thinking about, some of these bigger kind of academic kind of things.
You got it. And just for a quick example, so this consult right now has kind of got my eye in the chat. That's obviously a very mission-based organization, right? So what they're doing has some social mission involved in it, and we get a lot of those too. And the kind of anecdote is, look, no margin, no mission. Serving a mission in those organizations is a privilege. That's a privilege brought to you by making a sale. So back to market research, just real quick, before my heart rate goes too high. What we have to do is realize, who your customer is. And again, it sounds academic, but you really should come up with about 5 personas, right? There are probably 5 to 10 market personas that you want to sell to. Okay, those are false individuals. Those are personas. So who might it be? What do they do? Why do they need your product? Come up with 5 of those. And there's always like, Robbie the retailer or Howard the wholesaler, whatever that is. And then you just develop those kind of characters as to this would be our perfect client. The next step, not real hard, find out where they exist in real life, right? I'm assuming that you've got a decent pricing model, that you've done some research, that you've got a product somebody wants or needs and the price is fair. So you what, right? So you've got the product and it's priced, we'll just say competitively. And then you've got the who, so you've got the personas, which are kind of false ideas, but then you match them to real people or real organizations. And then, and this is the most complicated part, call them and ask them to purchase your product or service. It's a lost art. If I can, Mike, Mike and I have done business together a lot, weekly basis for the last 18 months. 20 months ago, we never met each other. So there are people that if you provide a good service that you believe in, that's actually helping, helping the system, helping the environment, helping people, they can't wait. You're providing something people need and that people benefit from. Call them and tell them about it. And that's what's lost, is that the personas can be built. Pricing is tough, but there are people at the SBDC to help you come up with a fair price. But it's execution where people get lost. The who should I sell to? How much should I charge? That's academic discussions we can help with. It's in okay, I want to do diversity consulting today. Who do I call at Cardinal Health, right? And that's the That's the great part.
Yeah, and to that point too, as you build the personas out, as you do all this, put together. We're getting into a sales conversation, but you got to call more than just the person at Cardinal Health.
Yeah.
You got to build a pipeline here, because not everybody's going to buy.
Yeah.
But if you've built the personas and you've done, you have a sense that this really works for them, then you should want to tell them about it, number one.
Yeah.
And two, you've got to build the pipeline so that you have enough people that you're talking to that some of them will buy, and you can't just put all your eggs in the Cardinal Health basket. And then if that doesn't come through, oh well, I'm still in business, I don't have any money.
You got it. Yeah. And yeah, so we can take this as far as we want, but that is that really is the hindrance that we see a lot of entrepreneurs having, is the revenue is low because they don't try to make sales. And it's just a numbers game. You should feel good being told no. You got to tell your story to somebody, and statistically, this is how sales works. Statistically, the more no's you hear, the closer you are to a yes. The larger your sample gets in size, collective no's, the closer you're getting to getting somebody in that sample that wants and needs and appreciates your service. And as soon as you do, the ball rolls the other way. So it's really, when you see it like that, it's fun. I can't wait to be told no, because I know I'm just one step closer to somebody that needs my service and appreciates what I'm doing.
Absolutely. So let me just get this jumping, more conversation about money.
Yeah.
So let's say that you are making sales, you're doing some things. So number one, we talked about an approach to revenue growth. So that's super important. What are your thoughts on, external capital at this point, seeking not so much the grants that we talked about earlier, because again, it's there, but I don't feel that that's like real, long-term strategy for sure. What are your thoughts on, when you should seek loans, when you should maybe even think about, investors or bringing more of your own money back to it, or reinvesting? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, there's a couple of thoughts. The first is I am in love with variable cost models, and I'm trying to read, who's doing what in the chat as we're talking, but I have a very simple mind, so it's one thing at a time. But if there's any way that you can structure your business in a very if there's any way you can structure your business with a variable cost model versus a fixed cost model, that is always really, really scalable and really lends to self-funding versus borrowing money or seeking out investment dollars. So that's something that we always suggest. Fixed cost typically has a lot more profitability at the higher end, but if it's ever possible, start with a variable cost model, scale that model until you're very comfortable. So if you have the consulting firm, or really, you can do it with about any industry. Manufacturing, it's the hardest to do, but really in any industry, you can set up that model. I love it. It's not hard to do. It's very simple to explain. Start there, because that is the most scalable on its own bottom, right? So that's an excellent way for product testing, because if you're all variable cost, you don't actually incur a whole lot of charges until you start making sales. It's a great way to test a market and get true market feedback with revenue. If it doesn't, somebody wrote my name in the chat, threw me off. If it doesn't lend itself to that, if it doesn't, yeah, thanks, Patrick. If it doesn't lend itself to that, I'm always pretty hesitant with external funding at all. It's necessary in some fields. I get really nervous because as soon as you take external funding, regardless of the form, you no longer work for you, and that's that's okay. That's fine. but just to realize you're turning that corner. Some people get so excited about having an investor because it's really, it inflates your ego a little bit. But
Yeah.
you know, they get excited about that. But you just realize, especially if you take equity money, you know, you're not in control anymore, and that's really important. So when you ask about keeping cash around, I'm huge into variable cost models. I'm huge into financial projections based on those 1, 3, 5-year plans. Which, by the way, if you're on the call, the SBDC can help you set those. Mike has access to some papers that or worksheets that we have that can help you plan them out. You know, those are free and they're yours if you want them. So that's critical. So you know how much cash you're going to have around based on growth. Use variable costing so you don't have to take out debt too early and start those fixed costs. And then my advice is, if you really, really need it, you know, I'm a fan of debt funding, of responsible debt funding, because you can buy that back once you have success. Getting your equity back is going to take a lot, and it's going to be real expensive.
Absolutely. That's for sure. And, you know, I think a lot of people, I mean, I think there are people I've seen that they're pursuing investors. They don't really know what that means, and their business really won't support investors. So they're wasting a lot of time, but they don't understand either. You know, I hear oftentimes, well, I have a silent investor, you know, or somebody's going to put money into it. They're going to be a silent investor. Well, they're going to be a silent investor as long as everything's going well, both with the business and their personal life. So, you know, if the business isn't doing as well, all of a sudden you don't have a silent investor. Or let's say that something happens in their personal life. So let's say that, you know, they need cash because of a divorce situation, or they need cash because they've had children or something like that. You know, all of a sudden they're not as silent because they're in your business all the time, you know, trying to either get their money or trying to give you advice to increase sales. So yeah, it's if you can do it internally, you do have much more control.
Yeah, and you can set up costing models to help with that. I mean, that's you really can, or you can try to negotiate terms out. So you know you can build yourself a really great cash conversion cycle, which is important to understand. Pretty basic term, but I will say, just to add on to that conversation, Mike, if I can, investors are great if there's a reason they're buying in, right? So if you're going to start a consulting firm, and I've started 2 companies, 3 that had just variable cost models, and they were consulting type-ish, and one was a service business. You know, I might be a decent investor if you're starting a small consulting firm. And the reason is because I have skills to bring and a network to bring. If you can get an investor that'll add to your skill set and add a network and is willing to put some cash in the, some skin in the game, that's a different conversation than I need operating cash. I'm going to go sell half my company to somebody that doesn't have anything else to bring. So yeah, investors, if you can get them for the right reasons, they're fine. Just realize you're not in control anymore. Like you said, now you're married, and all of their issues are your business's issues as well.
Absolutely. So we do have a chat. So I don't know if you can see that. I think this was part of the TJ putting your name in. Suppliers.
I'm sorry, you froze up for 1 second. Can you repeat the question for me?
Like I said, it's in the chat, so if you get a chance to glance there. But it says, what concessions did you see small business owners make to negotiate longer terms with suppliers? Are there any specifics you might have seen over the last?
Yeah, I mean, really, when it got to its worst case. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. There's a delay.
No.
Okay.
Good.
I can see Patrick and Joe's staff and Kyra. So just stay moving so I know for sure people are. Somebody needs a fan in their background. All right. So if you, what we saw really were longer payment terms. We saw credit on either no terms or credit at a much reduced, so they might waive the late fee penalties. It didn't go as far as, like the landlord moratoriums and those types of things. But I think certainly there was a threat at some point that especially suppliers of like food service industries, retailers, we worked with one shop that had a whole bunch of equipment, and they were on what they call floor plans. So if you sell big retail stuff, you can floor plan out. It's just basically interest only financing. But so the interest kicks in right after about a year as opposed to right away. So you get a chance to sell the equipment out. There were some concessions made there. We saw some folks, I'll give an example. There was one business we worked with that they had some issues with their suppliers, and they had went on cash only. So the supplier wasn't giving them credit. They had went to cash only. Well, because a lot of their customers were waiting on stimulus checks, or they were using credit or something to that extent, they would have lost a lot of sales, and the manufacturer or the supplier would have lost a lot of sales. So in that negotiation, it's like, we're getting orders, we're processing payments, but the timing doesn't work out. So they got a lot of sales by being able to go back to terms as opposed to cash. So those are probably really specific. And I honestly don't think that time is over. I think we're still in an environment to where large suppliers saw how important small businesses are to them as de facto distribution centers, or retail shops. So I think the conversation, we're still in the season where a conversation about terms which were at once you wouldn't even ask for is probably still a reasonable conversation to have, especially if you can swing it to the, look, this is going to let me stay in business now so I can be in business for 10 years. Imagine the sales that we're going to make together over the 11 years, not the negative cash cycle you have to go into over the next 3 quarters. If you get a decent rep, so that supply rep, right, or a decent CEO of a smaller wholesaler or distribution company, then they'll typically hear you out, especially if you've got some good history post or pre-COVID.
Absolutely. So let's do this. We've got a little bit of time, and I want to get to kind of my last big question. And I prepped you a little bit on this yesterday or a couple of days ago. We talked. Let's talk about workforce and employees, because I get a lot of questions. And anytime I do a presentation, I'm getting, well, what about employees? I can't find employees. And you see it all over the news. You see it all over the place. What do you recommend in terms of dealing with this employee search effort, how to recruit, and then obviously even finding the right people?
Yeah, well, Mike, you warned me about the specificity of the conversation. So I'll be extremely specific, and I'll share examples from the current firm. What we have to do right now is look for untapped labor pools, because they exist and they're being overlooked by people that can pay big salaries. And most of the time, small businesses can't, right? But the Nationwides, the Cardinal Health, Abercrombie, frankly, they can write the check. So they don't have as much issue because they have more resources. Smaller businesses don't often have the same margins or scale, I should say. So there are pockets of labor pools that are amazing, and they're being overlooked. I'll tell you one that we use, and that professional stay-at-home or professional working mothers. If you look on our website, for example, there are 10 of us, myself not included. There are 10 people on the team. All but 2 are working moms. They are moms that have kids that are at home. We have former engineers. We have, I think we have 6 MBAs on our team, 2 directors. One was previously a partner at a large firm. One vice president, one was a VP at Nationwide, engineers at 3M. It is amazing. And here's the thing, they can't work a 9 to 5. They watch their kids. They have elderly parents. They have other responsibilities. But you know what? From 9:30 to 2:30 or 3, there's no one better. No one better. So if you can offer some flexibility, it'll trump salary. None of the folks that work on our team have any interest in going and working for a big corporate job because they want to raise their kids. But again, you know, we got former VPs, we got former business owners, MBAs. These are smart folks. If you talk to me and talk to them, it takes about 10 seconds to realize who's got the brains in this whole organization, right? I'm very agreeable. They're very smart, but they want to work and they don't want to lose those skills, but they also don't want to lose time with their family. The bigger companies can't offer them the flexibility. So that's one very detailed example. But those labor pools exist. They're out there. It's the other small business owners that want a 20-hour-a-week steady income while they build their own small business. That's a driven group of people. And man, as long as you set the standards, hey, you work for me for 20 weeks, 20 hours, I don't care what you do otherwise. That's another labor pool that's completely untapped of driven and smart people. So those are examples, Mike. I think too many of us are still on LinkedIn and Indeed and not admitting we're not going to hire those people because the salaries that people are getting right now, they're insane and I can't match them, right? Or maybe we can, or I don't know about your business. But you can find the right people, great people, and offer flexibility and offer appreciation and offer opportunity that others can't. So that's the, you know, if you separate this into recruit, retain, you know, that's the recruit. Don't fight for the same labor pool that we may not be able to get. And the retain, you know, it's give them the opportunity. Be honest. I love small businesses because I'll give you two examples. One of our team members is just knocking out of the park the last few weeks. Just great, you know, just helping people, solid impacts. I dropped off a basket of wine on her front porch and told her you earned it, right? so you can do those little things that make people appreciated and to show that everybody's human, right? There was one of our one of our teammates, you know, for example, and they were on vacation. She's a spectacular person and does a great job. And it's like, hey, why don't you go out to dinner on the company? You know, take whoever you're with to go to lunch and let us pay for it. We really appreciate who you are and what you're doing. That's not hard. That's being a person and appreciating somebody's hard work. That doesn't often happen in the corporate ranks. So again, labor pools are out there to search for good people. They're different than they looked 2 years ago. Keeping people is not always about the highest salary. It's about giving them the opportunity they want and appreciating them. I don't know that it's harder than that. I truthfully don't.
No, that's a great point, and I think you're absolutely right that a lot of, especially small businesses, think they have to go and play the same game that Nationwide's and the Cardinals and these guys are, and then they can pay for this stuff, and they get frustrated and they're going to lose. Yeah.
So you know, it's fun. That's what owning a business is about, fun. So another quick example. I found out, I think it was through Facebook, or they said something. One of my teammates was eating out one time at a restaurant. So I called and paid the bill, right? And if that doesn't get you going as a business owner, don't be. You know, that's fun stuff. That's what it's about. It's feeling good in your heart as you're helping people.
Absolutely. That's great point. So we're about ready to wrap up. I have one more question, TJ. What is one thing that you would recommend the folks on here do to help their business out between right now at 12:25 and midnight tonight?
Midnight tonight?
Yeah, they got till midnight. What's one thing you would have them do?
Just one? This is tough. If you have employees, call them and thank them. If you don't, call your clients and thank them. That's, you know, 2 and 3 real fast. Call customers. Go call people and try to make sales. You know, again, if you have employees, call them, thank them. If you don't, call your clients, thank them for your work. 2 and 3, call customers, try to make sales, grow revenue today. And the third, in all seriousness, believe that this can work. You just got to believe in yourself, because if you don't, all the rest of this is for naught. It's all just moving the shells around.
Well, great, TJ. I appreciate it. That's great advice. I think this whole session's been great. I hope everybody got some real value out of this. As I mentioned, we will be recording this and we'll be sharing this. I encourage everyone to reach out to the SBDC if you need support, if there's something we can do to help you. Our website is sbdccolumbus.com, which you probably were on to get here. And also, I want to thank Chaz, and I want to thank the deck for all that they're doing to support small business owners. And I know Chaz put his contact information in the chat, so don't hesitate to reach out to Chaz, even if you don't know if you're quite ready for space. They've got a lot of different options and they can help you out. So again, TJ, thank you very much for participating today. It's been fun today, and it's been, really valuable for us. It's been fun to be able to work with you over the last, 16 months, 18 months, however long it's been. So we look forward to being able to continue to do that. So with that, I want to thank everyone, and hopefully you'll be able to come back. We're going to be doing another one of these in September, along with a variety of other programs that you can find on our event page at our website. Again, thank you very much, and you guys have a great day.
Have a good day. Thanks, everybody.